I'd like to introduce from UBC-O, Deputy Vice Chancellor Deborah Buzzard. Deborah?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. It's wonderful, simply wonderful to see so many people here for this important conversation today. First, let me respectfully acknowledge the traditions and customs of the Okanagan Nation and its people on whose traditional territories we are gathered today. And you should know that we at UBC feel extraordinarily honored to be on this beautiful campus here in the Okanagan. I was absolutely delighted to learn that we would be hosting this meeting. It really is a very important part of our ambition here in the Okanagan, and that we would be part of a very important conversation about cultural safety. It's particularly important in healthcare that we establish and understand the cultural realities and attitudes with respect to all the First Nation, Inuit, urban Aboriginal, and Métis community members. It's important that we are training people here on this campus with open-mindedness and flexibility towards people from all diverse cultures. And moreover, that we're giving people the knowledge and understanding that they need to ensure that Aboriginal voices are heard in determining personal and family health outcomes. I can think of no better place than a university, and perhaps particularly UBC, to have this kind of an important conversation. We are proudly a place of engagement, reflection, and action with respect to building intercultural aptitudes and understanding. By embracing intercultural understanding, we aspire to create a strong sense of inclusion and enrich the intellectual and social life of our campus and indeed the wider community. We are particularly proud and honored to have long-standing relationships with the diverse communities that make up the Okanagan Nation Alliance. And for this reason, I'm more and more pleased to see our expanding role and that of our scholars here on this campus in helping develop new cultural safety tools which incorporate the Syilx perspective. Events like this bring to life the MOU that we have between the university and the ONA, and we look forward to an opportunity in the near future to honor and renew that vital connection. And I should say we hope to do this as part of our celebration of our 10th anniversary on this campus. Now, I know for some of you it seems impossible that it's already been 10 years, but what a wonderful thing has been built here collectively. We are so grateful for that, and we look forward to the opportunity, as I say, to renew that commitment. And finally, I would like to acknowledge and thank the First Nations Health Authority, the ONA, and Interior Health, and CIHR for the contributions that have made this day possible. I know that you will have an extraordinary rich set of conversations. I can see that all the right people are here in the room. I know that there are people who wanted to be here and simply there wasn't enough room because of the wonderful response to this meeting. So I wish you the best. I look forward to hearing what the outcomes are, and have a great day on our beautiful campus, all of us. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce from the Okanagan Nation Alliance, Jennifer Hood. Jennifer is the manager for Child, Family, Health, and a number of other that I forgot. But, welcome, Jennifer Hood.
Right, Haskell and Jai Squeeze to Apple. Kentil Sampington e Nkamapalax. My name is Jennifer Hood. I am from Penticton and Head of the Lake near Vernon. And I am the Child and Family Youth and Health Services Manager at the Okanagan Nation Alliance. Child and Family, Youth and Health Services Manager, again. So I just wanted to take a minute to welcome you all to our symposium. Our CEC, our Chiefs Executive Council, provides the vision and the mandate for tribal initiatives, and all of our work is based on our right to self-determination. The implementation of that vision is guided by our Wellness Committee, and our Wellness Committee is made up of our health and social development managers in each of our 7-member communities, and I see Marie is here. Marie. And they provide the guidance and direction for all of our programs. Our nation has been long engaged in advocating and planning for appropriate healthcare services, and a large part of appropriate healthcare services is cultural safety and that link to self-determination of our people. Today is about providing another forum in which we showcase some of our best practices and tools that have been developed locally, as well as have critical conversations that lead to shifts within ourselves, within our communities, and the institutions involved in the well-being of our people. Another thing I'd like to do is thank our planning committee. Our planning committee is made up of a lot of those people who worked on our locally developed initiatives. So I'd like to acknowledge Eric Mitchell and Chris Marchand. Wait. Vanessa Mitchell. Vanessa's over here somewhere. Wait. We had Rochelle Cole from UBC Okanagan, Mike Evans from UBC Okanagan. I don't know where they are, but they'll be up here, back there. As well as Jesse Nyberg. Is Jesse here? Jesse's over there. Did I leave anyone out? Darcy Doberstein from Interior Health Authority. Is Darcy here? Darcy's there. Sorry, it's hard to see. So that was our planning team along with Fabian and Jolene Michelle, who brought this symposium together and had a lot of long conversations on cultural safety, what that means to them, and really what we wanted to share with you today. So I also wanted to take a moment to introduce or let you know that ONA has a number of staff members here. If all of our staff members in the room want to stand up. So Christiana is our Nation Health Planner, and I just wanted to introduce her. So throughout the day, if you want to come and talk to her about our Nation Health Planning activities and information about the work that we're doing there. In the back is Karen Gabriel. She is our project coordinator for our KUHAST program, which is a program for 7 to 12-year-olds. And it's a mental health prevention program, and we have a number of other staff. They're busy doing things. Oh, and Ruby Peterson is our Seal Indian Residential School Support Lead. So it's important that you know who they are so that throughout the day you may have conversations about their roles and the work that they're doing in the nation. And I think that would help with cultural safety, which is about understanding of our people and of all people, but understanding of our experiences. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming, our community partners. I see some of our friendship centers are represented with Edna here. I see our school districts represented, and other community partners, Interior Health. I also wanted to acknowledge that First Nations Health Authority was also a part of contribution to this event. And so finally, I wanted to share that all of this work has been in development for generations. That all of this work has been thought about, and the vision of our people, the vision of all of the people it's been coming for generations. And so I'd like to really acknowledge all the people in this room who take all of their time to think about this, to have their hearts and their vision in what cultural safety actually means, which to me is about ensuring that there's appropriate, accessible, in this context, healthcare services, wellness services for our people, and for vulnerable people that are out there. The Cultural Safety Symposium marks an important step toward fostering partnership between Okanagan Nation Alliance, Interior Health Authority, UBC Okanagan, and the First Nations Health Authority to achieve all of our shared goals of creating a healthcare environment that embraces all patients regardless of ethnic origin, socioeconomic status, and spiritual affiliation. So again, I'm glad you're all here. I'm really excited that everyone's here and that we had such a high number of registrations. It really shows your passion, your commitment to cultural safety, to learning, to challenging your own beliefs and your own self. So I hope that you have some critical conversations today and walk away with some action steps that we all can take together. So Limlin.
She's good. Next, I'd like to introduce, I'd like to say a good friend, Dr. Jeannette Armstrong, to present. She's one of our keynote speakers, and it's such an honor to have her join us and share her knowledge and her wisdoms and her experiences with us. And I'm just so elated that she can be with us here today. So let's welcome Jeannette Armstrong.
Everyone, just greetings everyone, and I do want to also add my thanks and admiration for all the work that has come together to make this happen today. I want to acknowledge Pauline Terbasket, who's there taking a photograph. She always stays in the background, but I always make sure she gets acknowledged. Our High Lady, she does a lot of work. She's the director of the Okanagan Nation Alliance, and like the chiefs say, she's our boss. So I really wanted to acknowledge you, Pauline, and thank you. And also everyone here at UBC that's made this possible. It's really an exciting day. I know that I have a PowerPoint to show you, but I did want to talk a little bit just prior to starting the PowerPoint. I want to take a moment to acknowledge our elders and our language speakers, in particular the knowledge keepers who have been maintaining and moving some of this forward in the language, moving it forward so that we could use it. And I know that there was a long period in there in which there was a lot of confusion and a lot of loss as a result of concerted efforts for our knowledge systems to be silenced. And so I think this is really an appropriate place for those knowledge systems to come back alive in a way that is really necessary for all of us. And I think that, in my mind, is so much more important. I'm really always thinking about the indigenous people and what their contribution might be to help make things right in the world. And I think this is one of them. And so I know that while we're struggling as indigenous people to reorganize ourselves and to reinstitute our best practices within our communities, that sometimes it's not available or accessible or well understood outside of our communities. And so there's sometimes a struggle in terms of how cultures come together to try to find their way to get along. And I'm just going to use res words here so that I'm being at home here in terms of this community and my place. So one of the ways that we think about is this Inalkanwik process that I'm going to be talking about, which comes from our language, and I wanted to give the context of the word before I actually go into the PowerPoint to make some points about it for the Cultural Safety Symposium. The idea of Inalkanwik is the last part of the word. Wik means between us as a collective, among ourselves. And an Alkan is really the idea of, it's a metaphor of maybe a drop of water falling into the top of your head, one drop at a time, and then permeating your whole body slowly, like you would if one drop were dropping on a towel. Eventually the towel would be full. And that idea, I don't know what's going on here with the sound system, but it sounds strange to me. But anyway, that idea is a gentle process of informing and integrating new knowledge or new ideas or new understanding so that we're all at some point aware of that understanding, and it's part of all of us. That I think is the main idea, and I think that's what cultural safety really as a foundation in terms of its symbolic sense for the Seal people is really an important concept. So I wanted to share that with you. So one of the things about the Okanagan people is just a general background is that there is real clear evidence, archaeological, ethnographical, and linguistic, that there has been at least 12,000 years of occupation in this area after receding of the glacier. And that idea, I think, is really an important one in relation to the idea of Anilkanwik. The Seal Okanagan, our language, is one of 25 groups of the Salish people. You can see in white how large the Salishan group is. That's who we are. It's not just that we're Seal Okanagan. Seal Okanagan is one language of 25 languages that are the same language that are originally one group of people that spread out into. So you can see that it's quite a bit bigger than Great Britain. So I just wanted to get that one in there. So anyway, going back to Anilkanwik, what does that have to do with Anilkanwik? Well, going back to Anilkanwik comes from our Chaptik. And I did want to mention that the word Chaptik sometimes is thought about to mean myth or to mean legends or to mean stories, but it doesn't mean that. That's kind of in this Western context where they're trying to place it in terms of whether it's literature and stories or whether it's mythology in the classic sense, like Greek mythology. And I don't think it's either. I mean, it's part of both of those because it is story and because it uses stories that seem to be subconsciously part of what, some people think mythology is. But one of the things about Chaptik is that in the word itself, it's really quite clear that if you look at the word te'ik, what does that mean in our language? Te'ik means when there's a fire and then it dies down and there's a little bit of coal there and it's sparking. There's the coal, the ember is still there. You can always put fuel on it, breathe on it, and it'll be a fire again. That's what te'ik means. So it means that there's always this little burning spark that can light up and provide light, knowledge. It can provide ability to see, right, what is around you. And the first part of the word chap is a word that's really quite interesting when you put the two ideas together. You have this te'ik on one side and you have chap on the other side. Some of you that speak Okanagan, I see a couple of people here that speak it more fluently than me. And so if you think about chapsius, right, meaning two siblings that are so close together that they don't have anything separating them, right? That's usually what chapsius means. But it comes from the word of separating. Like if I were to separate my fingernail off of my finger, that's hurtful. But they use that word there, chap, right? You hear that chap in there. I separated my fingernail when it's supposed to be together, right? So that idea of slivering off a piece of light, a piece of knowledge, a piece of that spark so that it can be passed forward. That's what Chaptik is. So it tells you that it's meant to be transferred. It's meant to be included in the next generation's understanding and how they see the world. So it's an oral documentation system of sealed knowledge. That's pretty clear. One of the ways that we think about Japdikl is that it is a form of social instruction. I know some of the people use the word teachings because I think in today's world, teachings have a different denotation. Teachings mean you're instructing people, you're telling people, and you actually have somebody who's making everybody understand this. Well, one of the ideas that we know about Japdikl is that the person becomes self-instructed in terms of how those stories work. When those stories are brought into your subconscious, you see the world through those stories in a way. And so those stories give you a picture of how things work out there, not only in the land, but also in people. And so those stories provide that template. And I think that's really an important understanding about social instruction in terms of these Japdikl stories. So one of the reasons we know that is it's always has the animal, birds, fish, flowers, plants, rocks, trees, lakes, rivers. It always has those as characters in the story. Those are living characters that are interacting and doing things that tell us you shouldn't be doing that, or you should be doing this, or this is the better way to do things. So it's not instruction in that way, it's just that we start to see how systems work, very much more clear. And so our people that speak the language and that understand and see this can see how community as a system works and how it can be instructed by nature systems out there, which is vastly intelligent to our systems. We're in chaos, believe me. And so one of the things we know about Japdikl is that it transfers knowledge of best societal practices. Why is that? Well, we know that in order to survive in this landscape, it's pretty harsh. Our leader for the prayer today mentioned that soon our people will be going out there to gather food. This land is pretty harsh to people in terms of making sure that we know what to do, when to do it, exactly where to go at exactly what time of year to be able to put things together. And it always is important that people like today aren't saying, well, I don't know, I'd like to go, but I got other things to do. I'm going to go play golf, or I'm going to go to, on a vacation or whatever. It's really important that the society has an innate ability to be able to joyfully do the work that they need to do, to enjoy each other, to get along, and to be well out there, and to have the greatest joy in doing those kinds of things that sustain us and our people. So that's part of what the Japdikl is about. When we go out there, all of the land comes alive, and it becomes story, and it becomes part of us. So when we're picking those berries, or we're getting that salmon, or we're getting to know that bear as our best neighbor, that kind of thing, because he's the gardener. He's the one that spreads out all the wonderful packages of seeds that are already that already have what they need to grow, right? So for us, he's really an important person in our midst. So those kinds of things is how we respond to our land, but also to each other, because we can see how each of those beings are reflected in different things we do, in different parts that we play as community members and as individuals. We require knowledge, and we find ways to preserve them. The Seal people, the Salish people, use Japdikl as a way to preserve knowledge and transfer it. So that knowledge isn't just about where to go, when to go, and which place to go, and it's also very much about how our society should behave, how we should function, the things that you could say, are our ethics, societal ethics, the things that we do and don't do, the rules that we don't break among ourselves as human beings, and how we should interact with one another. So one of the things about the language is that the language does have a lot of that understanding within them, but it's really based on ecological knowledge. Our language really reflects what the ecology out there does. I could take a lot of words and break them up and show you that, but I don't want to do that in this case. But it's because one group has been in one place for a long time. It's an old language. It's the Syilx language is at least 5,000 years old in this place. So the land is what informs the language. The place is what informs the language. The way that we organize, the way that we do things, the ceremonies that we have are all reflective of that. And you think about English, for instance, which is like, a toddler compared to that language. In the way that New English today is like, 1,500 years old at the most in terms of the way that we speak it right now. So you can imagine what's missing there and what might have been there from the indigenous languages that it is formed out of in relation to their places. So just carrying on here, it's in terms of the knowledge, I mentioned that already, that Japdik has nature characters. The characters themselves, you can think of each character as a piece of knowledge. If we know what that Skimchis does in its daily life, how it provides for us, what its relationship is to those berries and to that salmon and to those roots, then we can see what those relationships are, and we can see who that bear really is to us, right? It isn't just a nuisance, a garbage guy. He's really sacred for us because all of those other things there are part of that. And so one of the things we look at is, what does each one of those mean? So some of those main characters that appear in our stories, each is like a book of information. So it's like an icon on your laptop. You can't figure out much just by looking at the icon. You might be able to if it's a symbol, right? And you know what's behind that symbol, right? So without having to figure it out every time, you know what's behind word 2013 before you open it up. You know what it can do. It can do lots of things, right? So that's how each character is in our stories. So we don't have to explain every time, this is what bear's about, this is what they do, this is why we include them. All they do is appear as those icons, and they're hooked together. So when you're telling a story, there's the surface story, the surface of the Japdik, but underneath it there's layers and layers and layers of meaning that might not be there or accessible to people who aren't aware of what those animals actually are and how they're connected. So I'm going to slide over this one, but one of the things is it's a distinctly oral way to show what is required to be taught to succeeding generations. So one of the things is when you take two symbols and you put them together and they interact, the meanings are interacting as well. So just that's part of what this story is about that I'm going to talk with you about. The four chief Japdik is the basis of the concept of an Alkanwich. Those four right there. And it's alive and well. I think every school child from the Okanagan knows the story. I think every adult knows the story. And it's always called upon when we're making decisions or when we're planning, much more frequently now in the last 25 years than in the dark age before that, during residential school age, when we were told to be ashamed that we had this knowledge and this language in our skin. So the instruction in terms of a method is that in the story it outlines a method of how to get along, basically, and how we should respect not only diversity, but how we should respect and do more than respect, but to be inclusive continuously and to collaborate continuously, because that's what systems are. Systems are made up of many and not just one or a small group of it. So that idea of for instance, seal is a word that displays that really prominently. Yil means to coil or to twist something in many strands into one. And so if you think about the X on the end, the X is a command. So if I said mut, right, seal, right, so it's commanding us to always take the many strands and make one strong rope out of it. Unification. All of us can work together. We don't have to be the same. In fact, it's better if we're not the same. So one of the, and these are, I will read because some of you in the back may not be able to read it. This is the Four Chiefs story. The community of Syilx animals have been meeting for a long time. And these are just like, I'm just going to touch on the surface of the story, and are told that a new being would be coming. The Spelu, that's us, all of us. The four chiefs, black bear, spring salmon, Saskatoon berry, and bitterroot, are given the problem to resolve how the people to be will survive. So in our language, the word isn't survive. It's kind of like how they're going to be able to sustain themselves in a world in which everything already sustains itself and knows how to do that. So there's two key ideas that first part of the story gives you. That nature's beings have an intelligent order. That's why they've been meeting. That's what the meaning in our language is of meeting, is that people that are intelligent are going to sit down and meet, right? And because there's some kind of an order in place that they're meeting about, right? So there's a community, and that they're going to establish an order, or that there already is an order. Well, we know that there's an intelligent order out there. It doesn't need us. It doesn't, for sure, could do without us. And it's going to carry on beautifully, right? So that idea of an intelligent order, that it's necessary that humans are going to have to fit into that to sustain themselves. Because what they don't realize is that if they disturb that order, break up that order, use up that order, they're not going to sustain themselves. They're going to be the first ones out the door. So that's one of the key points in that, is that humans are going to have to somehow fit into it. That's why they're being asked to consider how are humans going to do that. So there are four key characteristics that are given to you. No community has four chiefs, right? So why four chiefs in this story, right? So the idea of the icon about chief is what I just said earlier, that word Syilx and that word il michum. You hear that word il from Syilx in il michum, right? Mich means the many strands, so il michum is to unify those many strands in their community. So in this sense, the four chiefs are not about those animals, are not about the chiefs of the communities, but major voices that need to have voice, that need to be able to say, this is the way things are. So those four key characteristics which must have voice in any community in terms of seeking solutions to a common problem is what those chiefs represent. So why those four chiefs, right? So you have Scumfeast, which is black bear at the top there, and Speetlam, which is the bitterroot, and Didich, which is the salmon, and Sia, which is chains. And I'm just going to briefly go into them. In terms of Scumfeast, we know that in the story, Scumfeast was identified as the elder. The person that is the oldest one. The idea of having the most experience behind them. That's really what an elder is. Seeing the world in all different ways. So they may have a longer, broader perspective than others. The idea of Spitlam is that it's a root. A root holds onto the ground and digs deep and pulls up everything that it needs for its sustenance. It doesn't have to go swimming out to the ocean to get the sustenance. It knows how to turn the rocks and the sand and the water into a beautiful flower. You go out there and you look at that flower and it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. And that's one of the voices of the community. How do we do that? How do we create that network that makes everything become beautiful, right? So that root is an important idea. The idea of Titi'ich, on the salmon, on the other hand, we just had a beautiful ceremony that Okanagan Nation hosts every year at Penticton to restore the salmon back into the river system. When they collect the egg, they look after them, the school children look after them, and then when they hatch out in the spring, then they release them into the river system. They're like this small, right? If you ever been at the release, they're that small. Well, they go all the way out to the ocean. And they spend 3 or 4 years out there, and they collect all the nutrients and the food, and they come back and they're like this, right? That's the Chinook salmon, the titi, and they're packed with food and nutrients and vitamins and everything beautiful. They bring it home to us, and we can eat, we can survive, we can be next generation. So that struggle for them is hard. That struggle every inch of the way upstream is against the flow. So that tells you something about community, what community has to see in terms of and inspire and empower. So it's situated opposite to that other idea of staying grounded. So that idea of applying yourself, action and movement and mobility is different than staying in one place and being interdependent. That is about independent action. Sometimes in community you have that come against each other like that. So they got to be in balance. So the same way with the Skamkisten, the traditions, sia represents, you know what a sia is? It's a Saskatoon berry, right? What is a berry? It's a whole bunch of seeds packed in nutrient, right? What is a seed? The seed is a possibility. Yeah. If it's in the right place at the right time and has the right conditions, it's going to grow into this beautiful bush and it's going to give us the food every year. You know, if the bees are there and the butterflies are there and the rain comes down at the right time and so on and so on, it's going to provide 10 baskets for us, right? And for us, that's really an important concept, that the possibility of a new growth is there, new ideas, a new place, a new opening, a new space. So that idea of innovations and change is really an important thing. Everything, if they just stayed the same, would stagnate. That's an ecological principle. Stagnation needs disturbance, needs change. And that for us is important in any community. So that's where why those 4 chiefs and not other ones. They could have picked anybody from the vast number of other animals, but these 4 represent specific things to the community. So here's the next part of the story. They each give different ideas until finally they tell Chief Black Bear, since he's the eldest, that he should determine from their discussion what the answer might be. Right? So they all talk and talk, because that's what they're told. You talk about it, and the 4 of you, come up with an answer about how the humans are going to survive in the future. So one of the things that does is that there's an instruction there that there has to be a discussion using those 4 concepts, including those 4 concepts and all the different parts of what they represent in any discussion for it to be whole, for it to have the best and all the information and all the perspectives and all the empowerment that it requires and the buy-in from all the community. So just in itself looking at, okay, how do we include traditions? How do we include innovation and make it work when sometimes traditions and, chains come into conflict, especially in our bands? So there has to be a way of people are closely living together for those 2 things to be, to be reconciled and work together so that harmony is in place. And the same thing with, that independent applications and the relationships, integrations part, right? How do you bring those 2 together? So each voice must be engaged to provide clarification on their common problem from each of their unique characteristics is important in an Anaukanwik dialogue. So after they tell Skamukis that maybe after listening to them, maybe he should, because he has the most experience, he should give them some direction. He tells them that since they determined that all they have to give is their bodies, in other words, there's nothing else but them there. So that's all they have to give. He will give his body first. And that if he lays his body down, what are they going to give? So he says, okay, all we have to give is our bodies. Somebody has to step forward and offer this. It's the elephant in the room, right? They're going to eat us. So he says, well, I'll put my body down. What are you guys going to do? So, of course, because they're in it together, they all realize that they have to say, well, we have to do the same, no less. So the key point of that is that once the effects of the problem from each voice is clarified, so that's the first clarification stage of a 4-day process for an actual Anaukanwik, is if you have a problem, you spend that time just clarifying the problem, not trying to solve it from everybody's point of view, like what do you see there going wrong, and you get a bigger picture and understanding about it. So an approach is taken in which the most experienced in synthesizing, not deciding, okay, you're the loudest or you're the toughest or whatever, you tell us what we're to do or we'll elect you to do that. It's the best who can synthesize what the whole community is saying and how they're saying it that stands up. So, well, maybe this is the direction we're going to move in. This is the direction we're going to take it in. So that's how our chiefs were trained traditionally. That the best person to synthesize would provide direction toward the common goal. So where do we want to go with this, right? Well, in this case, they want the people to know how to get along and survive with the rest of the world, right? So, but each voice must contribute equally. So that's kind of that part of the story. There's only 2 more parts to the story. So then Black Bear tells them that they must be able to revive him. He says, what good is it going to do if I lay down and then there's no more of me? It's not going to do the future people any good. So I've always got to be able to be revived. If we can figure that one out, then then we can give our bodies to them. So for that idea to work in the future is also the idea that a community must always be able to revive its practices, its gifts, its knowledge, and its way of doing things. It must always put institutions in place which maintain those good practices. So that's what our ceremony is about. That's what our ways of talking and our ways of thinking and our ways of collectively teaching ourselves and our children is about. So he says, for the idea to work, that everybody, and everybody that each of those four represent, in other words, every root, every berry, every fish or underwater creature, and so on, would have to contribute something in their own little individual way. So that's what the songs are about. He says everybody's got to come forward and sing their best song. So in other words, every individual has something to give, big or little. Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at my time here. We're still good. So the idea of a song also is, the reason they say the song, because when we and everybody else in the world sings a song, it comes from a different place than here, right? Speaking is the logic mind, analytical, logically saying what I'm doing right now. But singing is to be able to communicate and speak your emotions. And we know that with music, we know that with church, we know that with celebration of life or grief or any of those things that are highly emotional. That's where song comes from, and it communicates that without words to any human being. So they're talking about the spiritual and the emotional part of people, right? Supporting and working toward making something happen. So in other words, when we're going to stand something up and we're going to work to make it happen, to actualize it as a community, our hearts, our spirituality, our belief has to be in it, right? And in order to do that, every person has to be given a part. You can't expect them to want to do something if they're never asked, or they're never invited, or they're never treated, in a way which makes them feel like, oh yeah, I like this, I like being with these guys, So that's, I think, really an important key outcome there, is that no matter how big, how small, or how much of a scary individual, or how much of an insignificant individual, that that they have to have their say, they have to have their contribution. So all endeavors, no matter how seemingly provocative, are to be considered, and no notions are to be rejected. That comes from the idea of fly. All these big chiefs like Skumkist and Titif and Eagle, they're all the first ones there to do their best because they're the strongest and they have a lot of tools to work with, right? But they all didn't pan out, right? They sang their power song, and he didn't move at all, right? So, and Fly every once in a while would come by and say, "I want to sing, let me sing," and they're going, "Ooh, get out of here!" Like, what are you doing here? You're not a chief. None of your business. Just go back to the garbage pile where you came from. Like that, right? So and also they are, in our language, he's a, in English what you'd call a shit disturber, right? We don't want those around, right? We don't want to hear them. None of that. Anyway, so they're always shooing Fly away. Okay, so here's the next slide. Finally, everybody's done and still haven't moved Bear at all. Finally, Fly says, "Okay, go ahead, you try. We all tried and might as well. We're not going to lose anything." Well, what happens is Fly looks at his brother and says, I'm the only one left to try to make it happen for you. And if there's nobody else, at least I'm going to tell you how I feel about you not being around. So he cries. That's Fly's grief song. Sutsumist is what it's called. And he sings and says in that song, "If you're not here, where will I be?" So that song is a real clear understanding of how our community thinks about its members and the relatives out there when something is leaving us, or when something is going to die, or something is not there anymore. That grief is real. So the idea of not wanting any of our animals to ever be extinct, to ever be extirpated, is a real painful one for us, because we know this story, and we understand this story, and we understand that that's what revived bear, is that idea that they are necessary, they have to be here, and they have a role to feed us and sustain us. So that's what revives bear, that compassion and that grief. And of course bear wakes up, and the fly tells him, in the future humans will cry their thanks when they take your body, so that you may always revive. So what does that mean? It means using those things out there, those living things out there, only in a way to ensure that they're always there. 100% sustainability, 100% respect to them. We never use them for any other purpose than to sustain ourselves. And so he also says, and they must always sing their thanks to each of the chiefs for them to always revive. So that is one of the key points there, is that those most oppressed in the community, fly in other words, are the most important to empower action and resolution of the common problem. That's really a controversial idea in this so-called democracy, where the minority is always outvoted and silenced. It's always like, well, we're the majority, too bad. This is a democratic system. It's an oppressive system from the Okanagan perspective. In a system in which there are minorities, and you're always going to be a minority in this country, like supposedly we are, but actually we're not. When we think about it this way, that the idea of minoritizing, delusion theory, right? The idea of minoritizing is really an important one, I think, that we need to consider in this country that's supposed to be multicultural, right? And multi-plural. And culture not meaning race, culture meaning the different ways we learn how to do and be, right? Do things and be, right? So if you think about that idea in your community, whatever your community might be, is putting the most emphasis in calling the minority voice forward, the shit disturber forward, and say, hey, let's figure this out. Different things will happen in terms of how that community gets well and how that community becomes well to survive. So that idea, and this idea that true compassion, altruism maybe is a better word for it, in terms of the well-being of all equally, must be the primary motive in resolution. In any kind of building of resolution, it has to be all equally in terms of the motive. Right? So the motive must always be foundational to that, not, okay, well, more of you are going to use this and less of you. The motive must be for everyone. So for things to be fruitful and well and sustainable for a community, it must provide for all equally. It's a difficult thing, so that's why it's a paradox for these four to give us their counsel on that. It's a foundational ethic which must be actively instituted to be practiced continually. So that's the last part. In the future, humans will cry their thanks, and they must always sing their thanks. In other words, you can't just theorize it, put it into an obscure paper somewhere. You have to institute it. You have to institute that ethic by the things you do, by the things you manage, by the things you govern. So that ethic has always got to be for everyone, for everyone, for everyone. That's pretty close to the end here. The interior of the Naukin Center This is the 4 chief poles there. That idea of an Alkin, that's why it's called an Alkin Center. 35 years ago, when we had to shut down the District of Indian Affairs office to get them off our backs and out of our territory and telling us what to do, the chiefs here made a good decision. They said, we can do as bad a job as them. So get them out of here. They've never been back since. And in fact, our chiefs are doing a good job and have been doing a good job. This is one of the results of that. So the idea of instituting that idea of Anaukanui and instituting those principles, those foundational principles in everything that we do, collaboration and working together, and the motive being that it's going to benefit all the people, not just me here. That idea is part and parcel to the way that we work with the university, the way that we work with ONA, our communities, and the teachings and the stories and so on. So it's really an important one, and the ONA implements it practically in every part of its work as the leadership of our people. So here's one practical application you all know about that ONA has implemented. The principles of collaborating, including everyone, all levels of government, across the border, in Ottawa, many borders away. And and the jurisdictions in terms of municipality, regional district, the Canal Basin Water Board, the PUD districts in Washington State, Public Utilities District, Washington State, the treaty and so on between us and the U.S. in terms of the Columbia River, all of those things. But the most important that they started with is our own people. The ceremonies with our people, the reinstitution of that understanding and that connection of our love and our compassion to cry our grief for that salmon to come back. And it's back. It's here. It's feeding everybody in the thousands. So that I wanted to leave with you. And we're just about at that time that we have. That's the last slide. So I just wanted to wrap it up by saying the idea of an Alkin is a construct of procedure, the steps of procedure. So it's not something that that is esoteric or hidden. The procedure itself can be embodied by anyone because it's based on principles that all humans should be. And when the in the story it says the people to be, it didn't say just the seal people. It said the people to be. So what it's talking about is it's always speaking to the future generations. So in essence, we are the 4 chiefs here that have to do things in a certain way so the people to be would have a better opportunity to get along, to be well, to be healthy, to be cherished in their own individual right, in their own selves. And I think that's really a beautiful, beautiful concept. So I just wanted to thank you all for listening to me. That's all I have, so we can move on to the next part. Thank you all.